This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Harvester by Jean Stratton-Porter. Read by Cindy Steib. Chapter 3. Harvesting the Forest. The forest is never so wonderful as when spring wrestles with winter for supremacy. While the earth is yet ice-bound, while snows occasionally fly, spring breathes her warmer breath of approach, and all nature responds. Sunny knolls, embankments, and cleared spaces become bare, while shadow spots and sheltered nooks remain white. This perfumes the icy air with a warmer breath of melting snow. The sap rises in the trees and bushes, sets buds swelling, and they distill a faint, intangible odor. Deep layers of dead leaves cover the frozen earth, and the sun shining on them raises a steamy vapor unlike anything else in nature. A different scent rises from earth where the sun strikes it. Lichen faces take on the brightest colors they ever wear, and rough, coarse mosses emerge in rank growth from their cover of snow and add another perfume to mellowing air. This combination has breathed a strange intoxication into the breast of mankind in all ages, and bird and animal life prove by their actions that it makes the same appeal to them. Crows caw supremacy from tall trees. Flickers, drunk on the wine of nature, flash their yellow-lined wings and red crowns among trees in a search for suitable building places. Nuthatches run head foremost down rough trunks, spying out larvae and early emerging insects. Titmice chatter. The bold, clear whistle of the cardinal sounds never so gaily, and song sparrows pipe from every wayside shrub and fence post. Coons and opossums stir in their dens. Muskrat and groundhog inspect the weather, while squirrels race along branches and bound from tree to tree like winged folk. All of them could have outlined the holdings of the Harvester almost as well as any surveyor. They understood where the bang of guns and the snap of traps menaced life. Best of all, they knew where cracked nuts, handfuls of wheat, oats, and crumbs were scattered on the ground, and where suet bones dangled from bushes. Here, too, the last sheaf from the small wheat field at the foot of the hill was stoutly fixed on a high pole, so that the grain was free to all feathered visitors. When the Harvester hitched Betsy, loaded his spiles and sap buckets into the wagon, and started to the woods to gather the offering the wet maples were pouring down their swelling sides, almost his entire family came to see him. They knew who fed and passed every day among them, and so were unafraid. After the familiarity of a long, cold winter, when it had been easier to pick up scattered food than to search for it, they became so friendly with the man, the dog, and the gray horse that they hastily snatched the food offered at the barn, and then followed through the woods. The Harvester always was particular to wear large pockets, for it was good company to have living creatures flocking after him, trusting to his bounty. Ajax, a shimmering wonder of gorgeous feathers, sunned on the ridgepole of the old log stable, preened, spread his train, and uttered the peacock cry of defiance, to exercise his voice or to express his emotions at all times. But at feeding hour he descended to the park and snatched bites from the biggest turkey cocks and ganders, and reigned in power absolute over ducks, guineas, and chickens. Then he followed to the barn and tried to frighten crows and jays and the gentle white doves under the eaves. The Harvester walked through deep leaves and snow covering the road that only a forester could have distinguished. Over his shoulder he carried a mattock, and in the wagon were his clippers and an axe. Behind him came Betsy, drawing the sap buckets and big evaporating kettles. Through the wood ranged Belshazzar, the craziest dog in all creation. He always went wild at sap time. Here was none of the monotony of trapping for skins around the lake. This marked the first full day in the woods for the season. He ranged as he pleased and came for a pat or a look of confidence when he grew lonely, while the Harvester worked. At camp, The man unhitched Betsy and tied her to the wagon and for several hours distributed buckets. Then he hung the kettles and gathered wood for the fire. At noon he returned to the cabin for lunch and brought back a load of empty syrup cans and barrels in which to collect the sap. While the buckets filled at the dripping trees, he dug roots in the sassafras thicket to fill orders and supply the demand of Onabasha for tea. Several times he stopped to cut an especially fine tree. "You know I hate to kill you," he apologized to the first one he felled, "but it certainly must be legitimate for a man to take enough of his trees to build a home. And no other house is possible for a creature of the woods but a cabin, is there? The birds use of the material they find here. Surely I have the right to do the same. Seems as if nothing would serve, at least for me. I was born and reared here. I've always loved you. Of course I can't use anything else for my home." He swung the ax and the chips flew as he worked on a straight, half-grown oak. After a time he paused an instant and rested, and as he did so he looked speculatively at his work. "I wonder where she is to day," he said. "I wonder what she is going to think of a log cabin in the woods. Maybe she has been reared in the city and is afraid of a forest. She may not like houses made of logs. Possibly she won't want to marry a medicine man. She may dislike the man, not to mention his occupation. She may think it coarse and common to work out of doors with your hands, although I'd have to argue there is a little brain in the combination. I must figure out all these things. But there is one on the lady. She should have settled these points before she became quite so familiar. I have that for a foundation anyway, so I'll go on cutting wood, and the remainder will be up to her when I find her. When I find her," repeated the Harvester slowly. "But I am not going to locate her very soon, monkeying around in these woods. I should be out where people are, looking for her right now." He chopped steadily until the tree crashed over, and then, noticing a rapidly filling bucket, he struck the ax in the wood and began gathering sap. When he had made the round, he drove to the camp, filled the kettles, and lighted the fire. While it started, he cut and scraped sassafras roots and made clippings of tag alder, spice brush, and white willow into big bundles that were ready to have the bark removed during the night watch and then cured in the dry house. He went home at evening to feed the poultry and replenish the ever-burning fire of the engine, and to keep the cabin warm enough that food would not freeze. With an oilcloth and blankets he returned to camp, and throughout the night tended the buckets and boiling sap, and worked or dozed by the fire between times. Toward the end of boiling, when the sap was becoming thick, it had to be watched with especial care so it would not scorch. But when the kettles were freshly filled, the Harvester sat beside them and carefully split tender twigs of willow and slipped off the bark ready to be spread on the trays. "You are a good tonic," he mused as he worked, "and you go into some of the medicine for rheumatism. If she ever has it, we will give her some of you, and then she will be all right again. Strange that I should be preparing medicinal bark by the sugar camp fire, but I have to make this hay, not while the sun shines, but when the bark is loose, while the sap is rising. Wonder who will use this? Depends largely on where I sell it. Anyway, I hope it will take the pain out of some poor body. Price is so low now, not worth gathering unless I can kill time on it while waiting for something else. Never got over 7 cents a pound for the best I ever sold, and it takes a heap of these little quills to make a pound when they are dry. That's all of you, about 25 cents worth. But even that is better than doing nothing while I wait. And some one has to keep the doctor supplied with salicin and tannin, so if I do, other folks needn't bother." He arose and poured more sap into the kettles as it boiled away and replenished the fire. He nibbled a twig while he began on the spice brush. As he sat on the piled wood and bent over his work, he was an attractive figure. His face shone with health and was bright with anticipation. While he split the tender bark